Endurance is safety, especially in underwater activities. Whether you swim on the surface with your snorkel or underwater with your scuba, it is important to have a safety buffer. Sometimes you have to get to the boat towing your body. Sometimes you have to fight a current after your gear malfunction. In all those situations, endurance is key. Good Monday, amphinauts and DPV enthusiasts. This is Marek Swoboda with Amphi Americas, and today we're going to talk about endurance in underwater activities. Of course, our goal and focus of this channel is to talk about diver propulsion vehicles, but sometimes you have to swim using your fins and your snorkel, or your fins and your scuba. In those cases, physical endurance is giving you an additional layer of safety. In today's episode, I'm going to tell you how to improve your endurance for underwater swimming. So let's start with some basics. Underwater and surface swimming in scuba diving and snorkeling and freediving can be assisted by many devices. The most popular one is a snorkel, just a regular snorkel. Another one, pretty interesting, is a central snorkel, right? This is what we use for monofin, and for amphi, it's a great piece of equipment. Sometimes we use scuba gear. We use regulators, right? We use regulators for our breathing. Sometimes we use regulators with full face masks. And sometimes we use full face masks for snorkeling. Like this one. There's one common problem with all those devices. They change the way how we breathe. And unfortunately, all of them make our breathing more difficult. In many ways. Some of them, they increase the resistance. Some of them, they create a pressure difference between our lungs and the regulator. And some of them have a lot of dead spaces, which increases the CO2 in our air we inhale and exhale. All those things contribute to our breathing patterns, to how well we breathe and how effective our breathing is. So let's keep in mind the breathing problems we have underwater or swimming on the surface. And let's talk about endurance. Endurance can be improved in two basic ways. First way, which everybody is familiar with, is do your activity often and for a long period of time. If you want to get good in cycling, you have to ride your bike. If you want to be good in running, you have to run a lot. If you want to get better results with your fins, you have to swim a lot with your fins. So specific skill specific to your activity is the first line of defense. You have to practice your activity and then the endurance will go up. Everybody knows that. But the second level, which is not that well understood, is that in many activities, breathing can dramatically change your endurance. And breathing is a mechanical action, at least to a certain extent, and this mechanical action is driven by our breathing muscles. So the conditioning of breathing muscles is the second line of defense which you can use to improve your endurance. And this is the point we're going to talk about today. To show you how important breathing is for our underwater swimming endurance, I'm going to use a study which was published in 2007 in a European Journal of Applied Physiology. The link is in the description. In this study, 30 swimmers who were scuba certified were studied to show how different training protocols for respiratory muscles improve underwater swimming endurance. So let's get into it. There were 30 scuba divers or slash swimmers used in this study. It was a very well done study, I have to say, and the first step in this study was to eliminate the skill contribution. As I mentioned before, your skill level will determine your endurance first. So to eliminate the skill level contribution, they gave 4 weeks of swimming lessons to those participants. So everybody was able to get to a similar skill level before they started comparing the contribution of breathing muscles. So after those 4 weeks, they divided the group into three different sections. Section one was a placebo section. They basically done some breath holding, nothing serious. Group number 2, they've done something which was called resistance respiratory muscle training, and I'll describe it to you in a second. And the third group was called endurance respiratory muscle training group. And those 3 groups underwent different protocols. So placebo, of course, nothing, close to nothing. Resistance group, they were breathing against certain resistance, and the endurance group was breathing against certain resistance, but with a certain frequency. Okay, so let me explain how those 3 groups worked for 4 weeks before the authors tested them. So the training was performed using this setup. So you see the participant here was breathing through a mouthpiece. And the mouthpiece was connected to 2 check valves. An inhale valve you see here, an exhale valve you see here. Those 2 valves, they were loaded with springs, so it created an opening and closing pressure at plus minus 50 centimeters of water. So you had to create 50 centimeters of water for this valve to open, or 50 centimeters of water of this valve to open, right? So it was a resistance delivered by the system. It was also connected to a breathing bag, and the purpose of this bag was to keep the CO2 level at a constant level and to provide so-called isocapnic conditions for this experiment. So the first group, the resistance respiratory muscle training group, used this device in a following way. They took a full breath in and full breath out, and then they rested, breathing normally, and then they repeated this exercise, and they've done it for 30 minutes every 30 seconds. So it was one protocol, the resistance protocol. The endurance protocol was done with the same setup, but there was a difference. So the participant was given a certain rate, initial rate of breathing, and he or she had to keep this rate of breathing for 20 minutes. After 20 minutes, the participant was asked to increase this rate of breathing by 1 or 2 breaths per minute and keep it for another 10 minutes. And the next day, they started with the last breathing frequencies, so the highest breathing frequency, and they went through the same procedure. So every day they went up and up and up with breathing frequency, and it lasted for 4 weeks. After 4 weeks of fin swimming, fin training, and 4 weeks of respiratory muscle training, the 30 participants were tested using 2 swimming tests. One was simulating swimming on the surface with a snorkel, and the other one was simulating the underwater swimming with scuba. So the surface swimming was performed in a swimming pool using swim fins and a snorkel, as you can see here, but the participants were guided by a certain instrument consisting of lights on the bottom of the swimming pool, and those lights were showing them the pace they have to keep. The pace was adjusted to roughly 70% of the maximum effort level the participant was able to sustain. And then they measure how long those swimmers could sustain the 70% effort. Okay, so the pace was given to the swimmer by this apparatus here. They had to keep this constant velocity, which was roughly 70% of their effort, and the measurement was how long they were able to swim that way. The scuba test, underwater swimming, was performed in this vertical position. So the scuba diver was 4 feet under the surface, tethered to a weight through a system of pulleys, and the weight was elevated above the bottom by the diver swimming up, trying to swim up. And of course, after a certain period of time, the swimmers got exhausted and they dropped the weight, and it was the end of the test. So again, in this position, using scuba apparatus, they tried to measure time, how long those participants can withstand this test. So 2 tests, both of them measured the time, how long participants could withstand a certain level of effort. So let's see how the results look like. The results. Both training protocols improved swimming endurance dramatically, but in a different way, and it's very interesting to see that. So let's talk about surface swimming first. So for surface swimming, the RRMT group, the resistance RMT group, improved by 33%. The endurance group improved by 38%. So in this situation, the endurance training seems to be better. Okay. For underwater swimming, for this situation here, the improvements were 66% for the RRMT group, for the resistance group, 66%, and 26% for the endurance group. So you see big improvements in both cases, but for surface swimming, the endurance protocol was better, and for underwater scuba, the resistance protocol was better. And the authors speculate that the reason is that scuba gives us more resistance we have to overcome with our breathing, so the strength of the breathing muscles is the most important factor. For surface swimming, the endurance of those muscles is more important. So keep in mind that not everything is the same. Now the question is, what do we do with this information? Can we train ourselves using something like that in order to improve our underwater swimming endurance? And the answer is yes. We do not need this kind of apparatus to train our breathing muscles. And actually, I'm using something very simple everybody can use. And my apparatus looks like this. It's a simple resistor. You can adjust resistance by turning this knob here. You put it in your mouth and you can do whatever activity you want to do. I do it with push-ups and sit-ups and a little bit of indoor running, and this improves my performance dramatically. It's a very cheap piece of equipment. You can buy it everywhere on Amazon, wherever. There are many brands of those. I don't really care which one you use, but I strongly recommend that you start using something like that. And this gives you a very nice way of improving your endurance between 25 to 66%, which is amazing. So if you have the skills already, you can put on top of this something which comes from your breathing muscles. As you can see for this video, I'm wearing this NEDU t-shirt, which is my tribute to NEDU divers who made modern scuba diving possible. Gentlemen, thank you for your service. The link to NEDU Facebook page is in the description. And that's it for today. Thank you very much. If you liked it, please subscribe, give us a like, and visit our Facebook page, visit our website, where you can see how Amphi differs from other DPVs and how you can use it for your enjoyment. And of course, see you next Monday.